It is not any book, but it is the only book. Of course, it is the Holy Bible, truth and life. Before I start my presentation, I would like to tell you that we lived in many cultures and in many societies, and most of the time we faced a very strong attack on the credibility of the Bible. I mean, all the time, when you reach some people and said, the Bible said so, they said, who believes in the Bible these days? And even when you live in an Islamic country, the very common word that the Bible has been altered, muharraf. We heard this many times, and the Bible we have is not the true one. And my question always, and my challenge to anybody, then where is that not altered so we can compare and we know which is which? However, and this study, it's a very deep study, and it's going to stay for like 3 weeks almost. It's a very long study, and you're going to be surprised when you know a lot of information about how the Bible is really credible. And are we really sure that the Bible we have today is very close to the original one that the writer wrote, or something happened down the road? And if anything happened, then what happened? That we need to know a lot of things, and we have to be very prepared about many answers to many people when they ask, do you really believe in your Bible? Do you really believe this Bible, is true? Do you believe that the Bible you have is a credible one? How we guarantee two things. First of all, that what the writer wrote in the beginning, that what we have today is what the original writer wrote. Second thing, did God really told these people to write these things, or they have it from their own mind? In another way, is this a godly book or just a man invented? A lot of people today, even in some colleges, said, Bible is a man-made. And if it's a Bible a man-made, that's an opinion. Even a lot of, unfortunately, the wave of some homosexuals or something, when they read the epistle of Paul, to Corinthians or Romans, when he talked about this issue, and he said, the defense in this part, they said that's only Paul's personal opinions, but it's not that what God said. Many of people, said, that's this interpretation, it's for Paul, that's his personal opinion, but it doesn't mean, that what God said exactly about homosexuality or about fornication or about adultery or about anything. That may be that his own interpretation, his own personal opinion. If that's so, then maybe the whole theology of Paul, that's his personal opinion too. Whenever you say about the resurrection of God, maybe that's only his personal opinion too. Then who guarantee that is, what's the difference between personal opinion and inspiration of God to those people? And that's what we need to see tonight. One great theologian in the America is named Norman Geisler, and this guy is an amazing person. And I'd like to also note that for the copyright for these presentations, a lot of these things was being copied from Norman Geisler, Josh McDowell, and other American writers from their own book, so the credibility goes to them actually. I just put things together. So Norman Geisler said, God cannot err. Then the Bible, if the Bible is the word of God, therefore Bible cannot err. We understand God cannot do mistake. God has no errors, right? And if God has no errors, and we believe this, the word of God, then definitely what's written in the Bible has no error whatsoever. But the answer is this, the wrong assumption. They said the Bible is a human book, written by humans. It's not written by God. It's not like the Old Testament when Moses just saw God and saw his handwriting in a stone for the Ten Commandments. Because he said, no, it's not. That's the people who wrote these things. And if the Bible is a human big book, then human can be erred. Then if that's therefore the Bible errs. We answer back, we said Jesus was a human being too. Human being, sinned. Then therefore Jesus sinned? Of course not. So this wrong assumption is not true, because God still can speak very strongly through a human being. In the Old Testament, we see they said, God said, God told me to say that. God don't tell me not to say the things. We read this many times, and we're going to go through that during the presentations. If we go in Timothy, 2 Timothy, chapter 3, verse 16, Paul said for us, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. Key word here is inspirations. What inspiration mean? Inspiration has a very strong meaning in Greek language. It means to breathe in or to blow off wind. So inspiration, the word means God breathed in those people. So they wrote what God actually told them to do. They didn't invent it from their own mind. That's why Paul said, no prophecy came by a counsel of a man, but the whole book was inspired by God. St. Peter said that actually. And we understand that. Have you ever noticed that something is relevant to one generation are completely outmoded and useless to another? Can you imagine how incredibly difficult it would be to write a book that would be applicable not only to all culture and nationalities, but to all generations as well? One book only, the Holy Bible. We understand that every culture has different, customs and different, things to live by. How you can find a book be applicable to every culture, to every nation, to every time, to every generation, it's very difficult, If I write a book in Arabic or write poetry in Arabic, I cannot, even if I translate it to English, it's going to look very funny, or vice versa, And if I say there's something, read in different language, and try to apply it in the Arabic culture, they said, no, we can't do that. How you combine one book and one book only be suitable for all culture, all nations, all generations from time to time? That was the only book, is the Bible. And that is actually one of the mystery in the Bible as a book. What is the Bible? According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, and Britannica was generous actually to say that the sacred book or collection of books accepted by the Christian Church as uniquely inspired by God and thus authoritative, providing guidelines for belief and behaviors. And the key word here is uniqueness. And that's what we need to understand. Why the Bible is unique? Why the Bible is not like any other book? Why we can't just judge the Bible like we judge any encyclopedia or literature or Shakespeare, for example, or any other book in life? Why can't we just justify the Bible to other books or compare the Bible to other books? Because the Bible is a very unique book. It's not like any other book, and we're going to understand why. What is the Bible? Let us see what the Bible. The Bible has, of course, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And if we look here, and I stole this from Father Augustine's hand, actually, that's his credit goes to him. We see Old Testament and we see New Testament. I'm going to teach you something amazing to remember this. As I said, that's what Abuna Augustine taught me when I was young. See the word Old and the word Testament, right? How many letters in the word Old? 3, right? And how many letters in a Word Testament? Then that's the number of the books of the Old Testament, 39. And if you multiply 3 by 9, it's going to be what? How much is 3 by 9? Come on. 27. And that's going to be the number of the New Testament book. So we have to understand the Old Testament is 39 books and the New Testament is 27 books. If we multiply 3 by 9, it's going to be 27. If we add them together, it's going to be 66. That's the total books of the New Testament. And we have even the chapters. 929 chapters in the Old Testament, and we have 260 chapters in the New Testament. If we add them, it will be 1189. Be surprised that we know even the words of the Bible. So number of the word, almost total 400,000, 39, 38. That's a total word. I'm not telling you this is statistics to show off about numbers, but to tell you something that we're monitoring the Bible. We know how many chapters, we know how many words, we know how many letters, and we know how a lot of things. You know, there's a lot of study in even how many words, what is the mid-word of the Bible, which chapter is the mid-chapter. All this has been monitored for years. In the Old Testament, when they used to inscribe the Bible, they used to pronounce it in a louder voice. And if one copy has one letter mistake, they confiscated this copy and they burned it and put it away. They cannot even use it. If it has one letter or one thing is not matching, it be revised many times before they use it. The word Bible actually came from Middle English, from Old French, from medieval Latin, Biblia, from Greek plural of Babylonian books, or ancient Phoenician city from which papyrus was exported. The first things that the Bible was written on was papyrus, of course. Papyrus came from Phoenician, so that's where the Biblius came from. That word, that's the word Bible came from. That's what we know what the word Bible means. How we look to the Old Testament and divide it into certain sections. The most common, distribution for the Bible in the Old Testament, that it has 5 sections. Section 1, we called it the Pentateuch. Second section, we called it poetical books, came from poetry, and then historical books, and then major prophet and minor prophet. And actually Jesus used this classification for the Bible when he was explaining to Amos' disciples. He gave almost the same way of look at the Old Testament. Let us understand what is the Pentateuch. What's it mean by Penta? Penta means what? 5. Talk, it's an old word, means roll. So the Pentateuch, the first 5 rolls, we call them the Torah, we call them Book of Moses, we call them the Pentateuch. That's the first 5 books in the Old Testament, which is Genesis, Takwin بالعربي, Exodus, Khuruj, Leviticus, Lawiyin, Numbers, Adat, Deuteronomy, Tasneh. Deu in the language means what? 2, or the second time. So what's called Tasneh, for the second time, because God repeated everything again, and between each line told him, lest you forget. لَأَلَّا تَنْسَ. So every time God repeat his word, saying to the people, I repeat all my commands one more time, lest you forget. لَأَلَّا تَنْسَ. And of course, 10 Commandments was the major thing in the Pentateuch. Then we go for the historical book. And this is very important. Why the Bible contains history? What's so important for God to tell us stories about history, about people? 2 things. First of all, to show us His mercy, His love, how He dealt with those people, although they are sinners or they're bad, and give us hope in life. So when we read this history, we see how God dealt with Israel. And Israel was a major pain to God. Every day with God and the other day not with God. This day we love God, this day we hate God, we cheat on God, we do a lot of things. But God was so patient. Even when He punished them, He gives them room to come back to His bosom and accepting them. So He gives us a hope, even for many, big saints. He saw that when they fall, how to rise up again and come to God, and God always accepted them. And also showed us a lot of things which is proof the Bible today. For example, there's many cities, there's many mountains. If you go to Israel today, even we just came from, and you see mountains and streets and districts still named after the name of the Old Testament till today. And that showed that credibility that the Bible said was true till today. The historical book, actually, we have Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 King, 2 King, 1 Chronicle, أخبار أيام الأولى, 2 Chronicle, أخبار أيام الثانية, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. That is called the historical book. I think I forgot to mention something. I want to show it to you. And the Pentateuch was written by Moses 1500 years before Christ. But that is not the oldest book. Oldest book, you're going to be surprised now when you know what is the oldest book. We're going to go through prophetical books, al-Anbiya. They divided into two sections, major prophets and minor prophets. Major, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentation, which is Marathi Armea, Ezekiel, Daniel. We consider those major prophets. We're going to minor prophet are the rest. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. That's all Malachi. They are the minor prophets. And that's, we know this is, why they call them major prophets? Because the length of prophecy for them is very big. For example, like Isaiah was prophesied for 60 years, give prophecy. And the time of prophecy that he talks about extended for many years. It started from his time to the time of Christ, was almost for 800 years. So he gave prophecy about all this time. And same Jeremiah, same Ezekiel, Daniel, all this. That's why we call them major prophet. And the other minor prophet, they were very important, but the length of their prophecy and the length of their time was very small. That's why they called it minor prophets. I think we passed the poetical books, which is very important to know. I don't know why. Okay. I think one slide was missed. Okay, of course we know that poetical books is like Psalms, Proverbs, the Amsal, and Job, Ayub, and you'd be surprised, Job is the oldest book in the Bible. It was written in the time of Abraham, actually. So it was the oldest book in the Bible, is the book of Job. And some people think it was written in Arabic, because or Old Arabic, because we're very close to Hebrew. So that's why they said book of Job is the oldest one in the Bible. It was written in the time of Abraham. Other stuff was written in the time of Moses, and that was almost about 400 or 450 years between Abraham and Moses. So, and we have, of course, Song of Songs. That's one of the, and Ecclesiastics, which is Gamma, Dama Fruit, these poetical books. New Testament also was divided into major sections: the Gospel, Book of Acts, Pauline epistles, which belongs to Paul, Catholic epistles, and we know what is it, and then the Book of Revelation. If we go in the New Testament, we have the four Gospels, which is Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. The oldest Gospel was Mark. Mark was the first gospel was ever written. And then Matthew, and then Luke, and John was the latest one. They believe that was written in the late 90s of, after Christ, like almost 60 years after Christ's resurrection. Pauline epistle, all the epistle of Paul, it's about almost 14. There's a debate about Hebrews, that it was written by Paul or not, but I think we went to that extensively during the Bible study. And today, most of the Bible scholars believe that Paul actually wrote the book of Hebrew, because they said it was denied that he didn't said expressly that's Paul, and some of his writing style was different a little bit, but we answered always during the Bible. But the last part actually proved that this was written by Paul, because he said was written by the hand of Timothy, and we understand most of the epistle of Paul in the end of his life was written by Timothy because he couldn't see, and that's why he dictated Timothy to write those epistles. The Catholic epistle, I would like actually to mention something for you, that Catholic here, it doesn't mean the Roman Catholic Church, but Catholic here means universal. And that we said in the beginning was one holy what? Catholic Apostolic Church, which means universal church. So the Catholic apostles, it's the 7 epistles not written by Paul, like James, Peter, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Jude, Yahuza, those 7. And of course, we have a historical book, it's the Act, and prophetical books, because it has a lot of prophecy, which is the book of Revelations. Then, why the Bible is unique? Why we said the Bible is a very unique book? Let us see. We have a professor here from Oxford University said something really amazing. He was studying like Eastern books, and he said something. He said, pile them, if you will, on the left side of your study table, but place your own Holy Bible on the right side, all by itself, all alone, and with a wide gap between them, for there is a gulf between it. And the so-called sacred books of the East, which severs the one from the other utterly, hopelessly, and forever. A veritable gulf which cannot be bridged over by any science or religious truth. That he was actually professor of Sanskrit in Oxford University, the old language of Hinduism and Buddhism and all that. He said there's a big gap between any sacred book in the East and the Bible, and there's a bridge, there's a gulf, like oceans between them. You cannot reconcile between all this book and all this philosophy and one book named the Bible. Well, the unique of the Bible, number one, is written over a 1600-year span. Or almost 2,000 years. If we add Job, then it's going to be almost 16. Imagine a book took 1,600 years to finish, starting from 1,500 years in Abraham and 100 years after Christ. And if we add, Job, it's going to be almost 2,000 years. Length of a book took people to write almost 2,000 years. That long. And that's why the Bible is applicable for every generation and every nationality, because it passed through a big, span of human history and culture and nationality and everything. Written over 40 generations. 40 generations wrote the Bible from different way, and we're going to see that right now. Written over 40 authors from every walk of life, including king, peasants, philosopher, fishermen, poets, statesmen, scholars, etc. For example, Moses, a political leader trained in the University of Egypt. Peter, a fisherman. David, a king, poet, musician, shepherd, and warrior. Amos, a herdsman. Joshua, a military general. Nehemiah, a cupbearer that will give wine to the king. Daniel, a prime minister. Luke, a doctor and an artist. Solomon, a king and philosopher. Matthew, a tax collector. John, a fisherman, and some people think he was a priest, a Jewish priest. I'm going to tell you later why. Paul, a rabbi and a tent maker. Mark, a rich businessman. James, was the Lord's cousin. How many professions? How many, different culture, different education, different level of culture, of knowledge, and they write one book, and all came in one agreement from different point of view. Someone very rich, someone like Amos, very poor. Daniel, prime minister. Moses, very wise and very patient. David, just a shepherd. It's different. And put all this collection together, but they go in one subject and in one topic, which is God's, dealing with man and man's salvation. Starting with the book of Genesis and end with Revelation, and we're going to see something amazing about that. Uniqueness and its continuity, written in different places. For example, Moses in a wilderness, in a desert. Jeremiah in a dungeon. They put him in a dungeon with that mud. And in all this misery, he was prophesied and write his lamentation. Daniel on a hillside and in a palace, part of it like that. Paul inside the prison wall. Luke while traveling. John on an Isle of Patmos. Others in rivers of military campaign. All this different situation and different mood. Example, somebody said, and we're going to go into that. Different times. David, for example, in times of war. Solomon in time of peace. Different time. Written in a different mood. For example, some writing from the heights of joy and other writing from the depth of sorrow and despair, like Jeremiah, like Daniel. We see that. Written in 3 continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. Written on 3 languages. Hebrews, was the language of the Old Testament. In the 2nd King, verse 18, this is the language of Judah. In Isaiah, called it the language of Canaan. Aramaic, was the common language of the Near East until the time of Alexander the Great. And then Greek, the New Testament language, was the international language at the time of Christ. 3 different languages, 40 culture, different people, different moods, different continents, different subject, and all came in one agreement. How you can't find any book, have this uniqueness of all diversity of situations, and you read and you see it's always continue and complete one another. Every book, end, but the other book is starting a new thing, and you feel that they are all, agree on something and saying the same thing. Also, biblical authors spoke of hundreds of controversial subjects with harmony and continuity. From Genesis to Revelation, there's one upfolding story, God's redemption of man. The paradise lost of the Genesis become the paradise regained of Revelation, whereas the gate of the tree of life is closed in Genesis, it's open forevermore in Revelation. See what happened? It's a story. It started from the first of Genesis, man's fall, and then the paradise closed, and the tree of life was forbidden. You cannot even look at it. And there's a cherubic, angel standing there with a fire. You cannot even come close. And the whole story of the Bible ends in a really joyful ending. Now the paradise is open, and you see the tree of life. So what we lost in the first chapter, we gained it in the end of the Bible. And the whole story in between, God's redemption and salvation. Uniqueness in its circulation, you're going to be very amazing with this. Hay Pickering say that's about 30 years ago, before the internet, for example, for the British and Foreign Bible Society to meet its demand, it had to publish 1 copy every 3 seconds, day and night. 22 copies every minute, day and night. 1,369 copies every hour, day and night. 32,876 copies every day. in the year 12 million copy of the Bible. And it's deeply interesting to know that this is an amazing number of Bibles was dispatched to various parts of the world in 4,583 cases, weighing 490 tons. That's from Josh McDowell, Evidence, Demand, Verdict in the Bible. Imagine that was 30 years ago. They published yearly more than 12 million copies of the Bible, and the demand this print shop has to be working day and night to print this numbers of copy, and it's 490 tons to be shipped on that. Of course, this some information maybe you can look at the internet that's increasing and decreasing in the Bible lately after the internet, because people now read the Bible more, but not necessarily in books. A lot of people read it in the net. I think Bishop Moses one time told us a really nice story about this. He said in China, for example, in China, the population is about 1 billion people, and Bible is forbidden. So they used to put like some Bible in a cases, in a luggages, and smuggle it to the country. But how many? You cannot smuggle 1 billion Bible. But now, with the miracle of the internet, people in China now can read the Bible in Chinese language, and Bible reach out to everybody, even if it's forbidden by the government. The uniqueness in its influence on surrounding literature. Cleland V. McAfee writes in the greatest English classic, if every Bible in any considerable city were destroyed, the book could be restored in all its essential part, from the quotation on the shelves of the city public library, their artworks covering almost all the great literature writers, devoted especially to showing how much the Bible has influenced them. A lot of even articles, a lot of books, a lot of poetry, they use part from the Bible. Even the art, the operas, the stories of music and musical theater, many times quote a lot of things from the Bible and just practice it, so we know that the Bible, their influence those people like. Well, if it is really a godly book, then it should be protected. If it is from God, then it should be protected by God, supported by prophecy and its fulfillment, correct when dealing with historical and personal event, free from any scientific absurdities. We're going to go quick in that, so you will know. God protect the Bible through time, through persecution, through criticism. Through time, although the original copies was written on perishable materials and has to be copied and recopied many times, the Bible survived almost through 4,000 years and never lost its value or authenticity compared to any other books. 2,000 years of the Old Testament and almost 2,000 years today of the New Testament, Bible is still there. For example, the book of death, or that's a very old book from the pharaohs and the old Egyptian. It's a very old book. But what do you know about this book? It's a dead book, right? There's a lot of even the Ilias for Homerus or whatever, the Greek philosopher. It's still there. It's a very old book, and it's a great book in philosophy and wisdom and everything. But what do you know about this book? Anybody, have you even heard about it or read it? No one. But the Bible is still for 4,000 years more read, more distributed, more respected, had this dynamic to change people's life, and that's what made the Bible survive through all this time. Well, through persecutions, in AD 303, Diocletian issued an edict in a Cambridge History of the Bible, Cambridge University Press, 1963, to stop Christians from worshipping and to destroy their scriptures. And an imperium later was everywhere promulgated, ordering the razing of the churches to the ground and destruction by the fire of the scriptures, and proclaiming that those that held high positions would lose all civil rights, while those in the household, if they are persisted their profession of Christianity, would be deprived from their liberty. That was the edict issued by Emperor Diocletian. Then, the historic irony of the above edict to destroy the Bible is that Eusebius records that an edict given 25 years later by Constantine the Emperor, following the equations that 50 copies of the scripture should be prepared at the expense of the government. Diocletian's order to destroy the Bible and burn it, and burn all the scriptures, whatever Christians still, kept the Bible. And when Constantine came 25 years after, he issued 50 copies to be done on the expense of the government. And you know how expensive that at that time, to write and inscribe the whole Bible in a manuscript, the whole Bible. Some historians actually believe that the Sinaitic Codex, which is found in Sinai, it probably was one of these copies, which is available till today. Through criticism, 1,000 times over, the death knell of the Bible has been sounded. The funeral processions, formed, the inscription cut on the tombstone, and the committal read, but somehow the corpse never stayed put. No other books has been chopped, knifed, sifted, scrutinized, and vilified. What book of philosophy or religion or psychology or Bell's letter of classical or modern times has been subject to such a mass attack at the Bible? Although all this happened, still the Bible, loved by millions, read by millions, and studied by millions. Many times, people said, this is the end of the Bible. One of the philosophers, Voltaire, the French author and the one who worked through the, French revolutions. He was one of the people who sparked, actually, the French Revolution. He said, 15 years from now, my books is going to be, the Bible is going to be replaced by my books. And no one will know the Bible is going to be in garbage, but my books is going to be elevated and everybody is going to read my books. Ironically, after he died, 15 years after his death, the Bible Society bought his house, and his house became the biggest print shop for the Bible in different language. And the Bible victory is, sounded again, although the threat was very venomous and it's very strong. A lot of people, criticism said, the Bible is not credible. When I was in Israel, I visited something amazing, and we're going to maybe go through that in details, which is the pool of Bethesda. It's Bethesda, they called it in Israel. And then, just 150 years ago, they said this pool does not exist. And the story about that guy, so paralytic, it was an invention of John, because there's no such a pool. Ironically, like I think 100 years ago or more, they found this pool. I took a complete picture of it, and it's amazing. And the Bible was correct for the second time, and all this accusation is died, and the Bible is still, loved, still read, still there, although all the attack against the Bible till today. It has more, of course, to say about this, but I think our time is up, so we're going to continue next time for the rest of this presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Any comments or any questions?
Historically, it's like proving itself, because with the reference of history, you can easily, some prophecies which have been told beforehand.
We're gonna go through that all in details the next time, and you're gonna be surprised. Yeah, okay. Of course. Any other questions?
Can we follow this on internet or Facebook?
This is gonna be put tonight on the internet. Yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube. And it's gonna be shared in Facebook as well.
You can reach it on YouTube.
Yeah, you can get it on YouTube, of course. Yeah, as of tonight, all this is gonna be on YouTube and gonna be on Facebook. Thank you.